Stay close to me.
Night was the worst enemy of medieval peasants. With sunset, the familiar world disappeared, dissolving into impenetrable darkness full of real and imagined threats. Daytime was a time for work and life, while nighttime was a time for survival, when every rustle made hearts skip a beat. In this era, darkness was not just the absence of light, but an independent, hostile force. It hid robbers on the roads, predators at the edge of the forest, and, as people believed, gave free rein to dark entities from the other world. Every evening, not only doors were locked, but also souls in the hope of living to see the dawn. Watch the video to the end to find out why even a simple trip to the toilet could be the last adventure in the life of a medieval person, and what object was the best protection against evil. What if I told you that the main threat of the night was not robbers and wild animals? With the onset of darkness, all productive activity on a peasant farm came to a standstill, plunging it into complete economic paralysis. This nightly collapse was a real disaster, repeated day after day for centuries. Imagine a farmer whose plow broke or whose harness tore. In the modern world, he could repair his equipment in the evening with electricity. But in those days, the onset of darkness meant the end of all work. The time that could have been spent repairing tools, tending livestock, spinning, weaving, or doing carpentry was irretrievably lost every 12 hours. A torch or candle provided so little light that it was almost impossible to work by it. Moreover, they were expensive for a peasant family. Wax was produced by bees, and this was a luxury unavailable to ordinary people. Tallow candles smoked and gave uneven light. Therefore, they were used only in extreme cases, when someone in the house was sick or a woman was giving birth. Every night literally stole 10 to 14 precious working hours from the family, depending on the season. Over the course of a year, this amounted to months of lost time that could have brought in additional income or helped prepare for difficult times. The only source of light and heat in the house was the hearth, but it was also a source of constant mortal danger. Wooden houses with thatched roofs were veritable powder kegs. A single spark falling on straw or dry wood could turn the result of many years of work by an entire family to ashes in a matter of minutes. At night, when everyone was asleep, a fire was practically a death sentence. People did not have time to wake up and run out of the burning house. Entire villages could burn to the ground in one night if the fire spread from roof to roof. The fear of night fires was so strong that many peasants preferred to freeze rather than keep the fire burning in the hearth all night. Domestic animals in the barn were also left unattended in pitch darkness. A peasant could not check whether everything was all right with his cows or sheep, whether they had started calving or lambing. A cow could fall ill, and the owner would only find out in the morning when it was too late to help. A pig could farrow on a cold night, and the piglets would freeze to death while the family slept. A horse could become lame or injured, and the owner would only discover this at dawn. Any nighttime incident on the farm became unmanageable until sunrise, often resulting in serious losses. The darkness made it impossible to protect crops and supplies from thieves. Small thieves could quietly steal vegetables from the garden, grain from the barn, and eggs from the chicken coop. Larger bands of robbers could steal livestock or plunder an entire farmyard under the cover of night. In the morning, the farmer often found that the results of his many months of exhausting labor had simply disappeared. A stolen cow meant no milk for the children for the whole winter. Stolen grain could condemn a family to starvation until the next harvest. Even inside the house, darkness turned any household task into a difficult and dangerous challenge. Cooking in the dark meant the risk of burns or poisoning. Caring for a sick child without light was practically impossible. Parents could not even see if the baby was breathing. Simple actions that we perform automatically, pouring water, finding the right thing, climbing the stairs, required great care and time. Every movement in the dark could result in injury or the breakage of a valuable item that could not be replaced. The complete cessation of all productive activity meant that peasant families could not produce surplus goods to sell at the market. This directly affected their well-being and their ability to save money to buy tools, seeds, or additional livestock. Without the ability to work at night, the family could not earn money to pay growing taxes or prepare for lean years. Every night lost delayed the opportunity to improve their situation. Night was a real obstacle to any economic development and social growth. Thus, darkness was not just an inconvenience or a source of fear, but a constant and relentless economic burden that weighed heavily on every family. It kept peasant farms on the brink of survival, preventing them from accumulating resources and breaking out of the vicious cycle of poverty. It was a quiet, invisible, but daily war for every hour of daylight, where the main and invincible enemy was the night itself. Millions of people lost this battle for centuries without even realizing they were fighting. This constant struggle with darkness shaped a special peasant mentality and rhythm of life. People got used to the fact that half of their existence was spent in a state of forced inactivity and anxious anticipation of dawn. They learned to plan each day so that they could complete all critical work before sunset, knowing that the night would not give them a second chance to correct mistakes or make up for lost time. This race against time defined their entire way of life and thinking. I'm very interested to hear your point of view. What do you think about how such a seemingly simple factor as the absence of artificial lighting could have a dramatic impact on the development of entire civilizations and shape the mentality of generations? Write about it in the comments. Are you ready to learn the whole truth about what really lurked in the pitch-black shadows of medieval towns and villages? At the first twilight of evening, the streets instantly emptied, as if on the command of an invisible conductor, and all law-abiding citizens rushed in panic to take shelter behind the strong walls of their homes. The night belonged entirely to those who were not afraid of the pitch darkness and openly despised any laws. The complete absence of any street lighting turned even the most familiar paths and roads into a veritable labyrinth of deadly dangers, where every turn could be your last. Professional robbers and petty thieves felt like the rightful and unpunished masters of all night roads, alleys, and paths. They could fearlessly attack late travelers, merchants, or craftsmen, knowing full well that no one would be able to come to their aid in the pitch darkness. Cries for help were drowned out by the silence of the night, and neighbors preferred not to venture out of their homes for fear of becoming victims themselves. The city guard, if it existed at all in a particular settlement, was extremely small, poorly trained, and even worse armed. Its main tasks were to maintain basic fire safety, lock the heavy city gates at night, and monitor compliance with market trading rules. It was absolutely impossible to predict where the deadly threat would come from. The danger could come from a beggar, a respectable-looking townsperson, a group of drunken young men, or even a desperate mother trying to feed her starving children. In the dense forests and open fields surrounding any settlement, the situation was no better and often much worse. A lone traveler was threatened not only by ruthless people, but also by truly dangerous wild animals, which were abundant in those days. Packs of hungry wolves, whose presence near human dwellings was relatively rare during the day, dared to approach village houses and even the outskirts of towns at night in a desperate search for any food. Bears, lynxes, wild boars, all became much more aggressive and unpredictable under the cover of night. Even the most ordinary drunken brawl in a crowded night tavern, which during the day would have ended with a couple of bruises and broken noses, could easily have had truly fatal consequences for all involved. In the thick darkness and general commotion, any trivial dispute over cards, women, or debt instantly escalated into a bloody brawl involving knives, axes, and other improvised weapons. As a rule, There were simply no reliable witnesses to the incident who could later accurately identify the main culprit of the fight and give truthful testimony. Everyone present was either too drunk, ran away in panic, or took an active part in the brawl themselves. The usual social control and moral restrictions that reliably kept most people within the strict bounds of public decency and religious norms during daylight hours weakened significantly or disappeared altogether at nightfall. The pitch darkness created a persistent feeling of complete anonymity and absolute impunity for any actions committed. This psychological state literally gave free rein to those who were naturally inclined to unmotivated violence, robbery, rape, and disruption of public order. That is why a strict nighttime ban on free movement or the introduction of a strict curfew from a certain time was not at all a whim of despotic authorities or a manifestation of tyranny, but a vital necessity for the survival of the entire community. Such measures were designed to protect peaceful townspeople and peasants, not so much from external enemies, enemy armies, foreign invaders, or nomadic tribes, as from themselves, from the dark sides of human nature that awoke in everyone with the onset of night. Night had a mystical ability to turn familiar neighbors, with whom people peacefully greeted each other and exchanged news during the day, into complete strangers and potentially extremely dangerous strangers. A respectable craftsman during the day could turn into a ruthless killer and a quiet housewife into a poisoner. Every time you left your relatively safe home after sunset, it automatically became an extremely risky and potentially deadly venture that only the most desperate or recklessly brave people would dare to undertake. Townspeople and peasants left their homes after dark only in cases of extreme necessity, to urgently call an experienced midwife to a woman in labor, to bring a priest to give last rites to a dying person, to report a fire that had broken out, or to deliver an important message about a military threat. And even in these critical situations, people never risked traveling alone. They always tried to gather in groups of several people, armed themselves with whatever weapons they had available, from kitchen knives to battle swords, and stayed together, covering each other's backs. Experienced travelers and merchants always tried to plan their routes so that they could reach their destination or the nearest inn before nightfall. Being on the road after sunset meant almost certain death. But real flesh and blood robbers were only one of the many reasons for the all-consuming fear of the night that tormented the souls of medieval people every dark night. Are you ready to learn the truth about the invisible, mystical, and supernatural horrors that caused even the bravest warriors and fearless hunters to panic? Lock all the bolts, nail down the shutters, and recite protective prayers from sunset until the long-awaited dawn.
Please protect us. Keep us safe.
Grant us strength this night.
The secret for which modern people are willing to pay thousands of dollars to psychotherapists and coaches was rooted in the deepest and most irrational fears of ordinary people in the Middle Ages. For medieval people of any social status, night was not just a time of rest, but a mystical period when the invisible but absolutely real boundary between the familiar world of the living and the mysterious world of spirits, ghosts, and demons became as thin as a spider's web and easily surmountable for otherworldly entities. It was widely believed that it was in the pitch darkness that the restless souls of the dead, evil demons, cunning devils, vengeful ghosts, and all other hellish creatures came out en masse to the sinful earth, eager to harm living people or lure their souls into eternal torment. These deeply rooted beliefs and superstitions were not just entertaining tales to amuse children or adults on long winter evenings. They were an integral and fundamental part of the Christian medieval worldview, offering the only possible explanation for all the frightening and inexplicable phenomena that regularly occurred during the dark hours of the day. Every suspicious creak of the floorboards in the house at night, every ominous howl of the autumn wind in the chimney, every incomprehensible knock on the shutters or door was invariably interpreted by the inhabitants as irrefutable evidence of the real presence of powerful otherworldly forces trying to penetrate human dwellings with the most unkind intentions. People sincerely and unconditionally believed that the restless souls of all the unburied dead, those who died a violent death, did not receive a proper Christian burial or had grave unrepentant sins on their conscience, rose from their graves every night and wandered aimlessly on earth in search of living people. These ghostly beings could take cruel revenge on those who had wronged them in life, demand just retribution for crimes committed against them, or simply seek a way to find long-awaited peace through the completion of some important unfinished business by the living. Old cemeteries with crooked crosses, gloomy forest crossroads where suicides and criminals were often buried, and long-abandoned and dilapidated houses where tragic events such as murders, suicides, or sudden deaths. All these sinister places were unanimously considered dangerous portals or gateways to the other world, through which evil spirits and demons could easily penetrate our world to terrorize, tempt, or destroy innocent people. Throughout Europe, there was a strong belief that under the cover of pitch-black night, all the local witches and powerful sorcerers secretly gathered for their blasphemous Sabbaths, where they worshipped the devil, brewed deadly potions, and made cunning plans against Christians. These servants of the dark forces could bring inevitable ruin to crops or livestock, steal a healthy baby for sacrifice without a trace, send an incurable disease to an entire family, or even kill a person with just one evil glance. Even a simple, suspicious glance from an unloved neighbor in the dark could be considered more than sufficient grounds for a serious accusation of dangerous witchcraft. For reliable protection against all kinds of nightmares and supernatural threats, medieval people used an impressive arsenal of magical means and rituals that had been proven over centuries. They would hang lucky horseshoes brought from the blacksmiths, bunches of sharp garlic and fragrant protective herbs, wormwood, St. John's wort, and thistle above the front door. Special protective symbols were invariably painted or carved on the outer walls of residential buildings, cattle sheds, and grain barns. Orthodox crosses, pentagrams, runes, and other ancient signs that, according to popular belief, could scare away or even destroy approaching evil forces. The church bell, which rang regularly at sunset and dawn, had not only a purely practical significance for medieval Christians as a signal of time, but also an important sacred, mystical purpose. People sincerely believed that the powerful bronze sound of a consecrated bell physically drove away all demons and evil spirits, cleansed the surrounding space of filth, and created an invisible protective barrier around the settlement. Joint family prayer before bedtime was not just a pious tradition, but a vitally important magical ritual that was supposed to ensure the safety of all household members until morning. The head of the family would recite special protective prayers, and all family members would cross themselves and utter incantations against evil forces. The dark period between midnight and the first cockcrow, heralding the approach of the saving dawn, was unanimously considered a particularly dangerous and ominous time of day. This was the legendary witching hour, or devil's hour, when the destructive power of absolute evil reached its peak and became virtually insurmountable for ordinary people. During these most frightening hours, pious people tried not to sleep at all, constantly read prayers, sang psalms, and made sure to keep a bright fire burning in their hearths, as it was believed that living flames and divine light could scare away demons and prevent them from approaching the house. The all-consuming fear of numerous supernatural threats was so psychologically powerful and destructive that it could have very real, physically tangible consequences for people's health and lives. A person who was firmly convinced that he had been cursed by a witch or had been bewitched could indeed become seriously ill and even die solely from the power of his own painful self-suggestion and paranoia. Regular nightmares, which afflicted virtually all inhabitants of medieval Europe, were unquestionably considered not the result of psychological stress or poor digestion, but the direct machinations of evil demons who deliberately tormented sleeping people in an attempt to take possession of their souls or drive them mad. These mystical beliefs and irrational fears were surprisingly universal for absolutely all strata of medieval society. From illiterate serfs to educated kings, from simple village women to noble court ladies. Social status, level of education, or material wealth had no bearing on the strength of superstitions. These deep-seated fears fundamentally shaped medieval culture and everyday life, forcing millions of people to live in a state of constant tension and anxious anticipation of an imminent supernatural threat. Every night, the familiar world was transformed into a grand stage for an invisible but very real battle between the forces of good and evil, between angels and demons. In this daily spiritual war, ordinary people felt like defenseless pawns who could at any moment fall victim to powerful otherworldly forces. They could rely only on the strength of their faith, the protection of the saints, and the help of the church. Thus, psychological terror and mystical horror were no less, and often even more frightening and destructive than any real physical threat from robbers or wild animals. Every night, medieval man was left alone not only with the very real dangers of the surrounding world, but also with the countless creations of his own imagination, fueled by religious superstitions. And in this unequal psychological struggle with their own fears and phobias, they often suffered crushing defeats, leading to mass mental disorders, religious fanaticism, and social hysteria, which periodically engulfed entire regions of medieval Europe.
Please, no more nightmares. Let the light guide me.
What I am about to show you was scarier than any ghost. Even if a peasant was lucky enough to avoid encounters with robbers and ghosts, a more prosaic but no less serious danger awaited him. A simple walk from the house to the outhouse at night turned into an extreme test. The complete lack of lighting made any obstacles on the way invisible. Stones, tree roots, pits, or simply discarded tools, all of these could cause a fall. In an era without antibiotics and quality medicine, even a simple fracture could lead to disability. The area around a peasant's house was not a well-kept lawn. It was a mess of mud, manure, and household waste. Slipping and falling into such slush was not only unpleasant, but also dangerous from a hygiene point of view. The outhouse was usually located some distance from the house. The path to it was not lit or paved. People had to feel their way, taking risks with every step. In the dark, it was easy to lose your bearings even in your own yard. You could turn the wrong way and bump into a fence, a wall, or fall into a ditch. Calling for help was useless, as neighbors were unlikely to come out of their houses. Pets also posed a danger. You could fail to notice a sleeping dog and step on it, provoking aggression. Large livestock could also behave unpredictably in the dark. In winter, ice added to these dangers. Paths covered with ice became veritable skating rinks. Falling on the ice could lead to serious bruises and injuries. Many peasant houses stood near rivers or lakes. A nighttime trip for water was also risky. It was easy to slip on the slippery bank and fall into the cold water. Thus, the environment itself became hostile. Every step outside the door was a lottery. Simple, everyday needs turned into a special operation for survival. All this taught people to be incredibly cautious and prudent. They tried to finish all their business before sunset. At night, the house truly became a fortress, and leaving it without extreme necessity was tantamount to madness. How much do you think our lives would change if we lost artificial lighting for just 1 week? The hearth was the center of any medieval home. It provided warmth for heating and flames for cooking. At night, it remained the only source of light, albeit a very dim one. However, this vital element of everyday life was also the main threat. Most peasant houses were built of wood and covered with straw. Any spark could lead to disaster. It was difficult to control the fire in the hearth at night. While the family slept, smoldering coals could flare up from an accidental gust of wind from the chimney. This often caused fires that destroyed entire villages. Thin splinters called torches were used to light rooms. They burned quickly and produced a lot of smoke. They had to be changed constantly, and this task was often entrusted to children. A child who fell asleep with a torch in their hands could cause the death of the entire family. Wealthier people could afford tallow candles. They burned longer and gave more light, but were also a fire hazard. An overturned candlestick could easily set fire to a wooden table or fabric curtain. Of course, there were no fire extinguishing systems. The only way to fight fire was with water from the nearest well or river, which was carried in buckets. If the fire had time to spread, it was almost impossible to save the house. Dense urban development exacerbated the problem. Fire easily spread from one wooden house to another. A nighttime fire in the city quickly turned into an unstoppable firestorm. The fear of fire was so great that many cities had strict curfews. In the evening, a special patrol went around the streets and made sure that all residents extinguished the lights in their homes. The word curfew comes from the French couvre-feu, which literally means cover the fire. Thus, the only island of light and warmth in the darkness of night was also a time bomb. People lived in constant fear that their home could burst into flames at any moment. This duality of fire, as a source of life and death, was one of the main dramas of the medieval night. Every night, families went to bed not knowing if they would wake up in their homes in the morning. This feeling of the fragility of life was an integral part of their existence. They could protect themselves from robbers, but there was no protection from an accidental spark. What if I showed you a time machine to a medieval house? Contrary to popular belief, a peasant's house was not an impregnable fortress. Its protective functions were very limited, especially at night. The doors were made of rough planks and locked with a simple wooden bolt or iron hook. It was not difficult for a strong man to break down such a door. It was more of a symbolic than a real barrier. Windows, if there were any at all, were simply openings in the wall. At best, they were covered with oiled ox bladders or cloth. In winter, they were plugged with straw or simply boarded up. It was easier than easy for an intruder to climb through such a window. It had no glass or bars. It was an open opening, inviting any uninvited guest. Walls made of wood or adobe were also not a serious obstacle. It was easy to make a hole in them, especially under the cover of night, when the noise of work was drowned out by the wind or the barking of dogs. Stories of robbers breaking into houses through walls were commonplace. The floors in most houses were earthen. This opened up another opportunity for intrusion. Thieves could dig under the wall and get inside the house while the owners were asleep. Even the roof was not a reliable protection. The thatch roof could be easily dismantled to enter the house from above. It was a risky but quite realistic way to rob a house. The entire home security system was based on trust and social control, which worked during the day. At night, when everyone was on their own, these primitive fortifications could not provide real protection. The only hope was a dog in the yard. Therefore, the sleep of a medieval person was sensitive and anxious. He had to react to any suspicious noise. Deep, peaceful sleep was an unaffordable luxury. The vulnerability of the home created a constant feeling of anxiety. The house was not a place of absolute safety. It was only a temporary shelter in an ocean of nighttime dangers. Are you ready to learn how the authorities tried to maintain order at night and why they failed?
Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
When darkness fell, the authority of the feudal lord or city council effectively ceased to function. The laws that worked during the day lost their power at night. Maintaining order became a virtually impossible task. Many cities had night guards. However, these were not professional police. but a duty that the townspeople themselves took turns performing. Their motivation and combat skills were, to put it mildly, low. The main task of the guards was not to pursue criminals, but to warn of dangers. They had to sound the alarm in case of fire or enemy attack. Fighting everyday crime was not one of their priorities. They were usually armed with halberds or simple clubs. Lanterns were a rarity and a valuable commodity. Their patrols through the dark streets were more of a formality than a real force. Crimes committed at night were rarely investigated. It was impossible to identify an attacker in the dark. There were usually no witnesses as everyone stayed at home. The courts often treated nighttime crimes with particular severity. If a criminal was caught, he faced severe punishment. This was an attempt to compensate for the low detection rate with intimidation. However, this did not stop the criminal world. Night was their time, their working shift. The risk of being caught was minimal, and the rewards could be great. Locking the city gates at night was one of the most effective security measures. It cut off the city from the outside world, preventing gangs from outside from entering its territory. Late travelers were forced to spend the night outside the walls. Inside the city, its own unwritten law prevailed. Some areas were completely controlled by criminal gangs. Even the guards were afraid to go there after sunset. Thus, night created a vacuum of power. Every person and every family had to take care of their own safety. There was virtually no hope for help from the law. Constant exposure to darkness had a huge impact on the psyche of medieval man. The lack of visual information sharpened other senses, primarily hearing. At night, the world was transformed from a picture into a set of sounds. Every rustle, creak, or distant cry demanded immediate interpretation. Was it the sound of a branch broken by a robber, or just the wind? Was it the cry of a night bird or a victim of an attack? Such intense listening kept the nervous system in a constant state of alert. A person could not completely relax even in sleep. This led to chronic stress and anxiety. The darkness also created a feeling of isolation. Even if neighbors lived just a few meters away, at night a person felt cut off from the rest of the world. They were alone with their fears. Sensory deprivation could cause visual and auditory hallucinations. In the dim light of a room lit only by the embers of the hearth, shadows began to move and take on bizarre shapes. Deprived of the information it was accustomed to, the brain began to construct reality itself. This explains many beliefs in ghosts and spirits. What would seem like a play of light and shadow during the day took on an ominous meaning at night. People saw what they feared. The long winter nights were a particularly difficult test. Spending 1,416 hours in darkness, cold, and fear was incredibly hard mentally. It was a time that simply had to be endured, survived until dawn. The cycle of day and night completely dictated the rhythm of life. Daytime was a time of activity, communication, and control over the situation. Night was a time of passivity, isolation, and loss of control. This duality shaped a fatalistic worldview. There were forces that humans could not resist, and night was one of them. All that remained was to pray and hope for the best. Thus, night waged war not only against the body, but also against the mind. It depleted psychological resources and kept people in a state of constant tension. The ability to remain sane in such conditions was one of the main survival skills. Traveling at night in the Middle Ages was an act bordering on madness. No sane person would set out after sunset unless absolutely necessary. Roads that were unsafe during the day became deadly traps at night. The main problem was that there were often no roads as such. They were simply directions, marked by ruts and without any signposts. In the dark, it was very easy to lose such a road. Once off course, a traveler could wander into a swamp, a ravine, or an impenetrable forest thicket. Without a compass and a map, it was impossible to find your way. You could circle around in one place for hours until dawn. As already mentioned, bandits were the rightful masters of the night roads. They set up ambushes in the narrowest and most dangerous places. There was almost no chance of fighting off an attack in the dark. Even if a traveler managed to reach a city, disappointment awaited them. The city gates were locked tight at night. The guards opened them only in exceptional cases and for a large fee. Taverns and inns located along the roads were also unsafe places. Often their owners were in cahoots with robbers. A traveler could be robbed or killed right in their sleep. River crossings did not operate at night. Ferrymen did not risk going out on the water in the dark. You either had to wait until morning on the shore or try to wade across, risking drowning. Traveling in a group slightly increased the chances of success, but did not guarantee safety. A large caravan could attract the attention of a large gang. In addition, it was easy to fall behind and get lost in the dark. Therefore, the entire travel schedule was planned with the aim of reaching a safe place by sunset. This could be a city, a monastery, or a fortified castle. The speed of travel was dictated not by desire, but by the length of daylight hours. Night travel was the preserve of messengers with urgent messages, armies on the march, or criminals fleeing justice. For ordinary people, it was taboo. Night kept people where sunset had found them. The contrast between the horror of night and the safety of day was a fundamental part of medieval life. With the first rays of the sun, the world was transformed. Darkness receded, and with it went fears, both real and imagined. The crowing of the first roosters was not just a signal to wake up. It was a symbol of the victory of light over darkness, of life over death. This sound brought great relief and meant that another night had been survived. With dawn, life returned to the streets. Markets and workshops opened, and work in the fields began. Social life, which had frozen overnight, resumed. In the morning, it was possible to assess the damage done during the night, to check whether the livestock was still there, whether the harvest was intact, whether anyone had broken into the house. Dawn brought clarity and allowed people to regain control of their lives. The roads became relatively safe again. It was possible to continue traveling without fear of getting lost or being ambushed at every turn. The world became visible and predictable again. Psychological tension eased. The sounds of the day, the banging of hammers, the creaking of carts, the voices of people, were familiar and did not cause anxiety. They were the backdrop to a normal, productive life. That is why sunrise had enormous symbolic significance in culture and religion. It was associated with resurrection, hope, and divine protection. Church services at dawn were a thanksgiving for salvation from the horrors of the night. Modern people, living in a world of electric lighting, cannot fully comprehend this existential fear of darkness. We have turned night into the second half of the day, a time for entertainment and work. We have conquered the night, and this victory is one of the greatest achievements of our civilization. Medieval man was deprived of this power. He was only a guest in his own world, which for half of the day passed into the possession of hostile forces. His life was divided into two states: daytime activity and nighttime survival. Awareness of this contrast helps us better understand the mentality and daily life of people of that era. Their actions, beliefs, and fears were largely dictated by a simple and inevitable fact: the change from day to night.
I tell you, the old woods were alive last night.
Are you sure?
We can see that night in the Middle Ages was not just a dark time of day. It was a whole dimension, a parallel reality with its own laws, dangers, and horrors. It carried physical, economic, psychological, and supernatural threats. The struggle against the darkness of night was daily and exhausting. The absence of light paralyzed the economy. The vulnerability of dwellings and the inaction of the law left people at the mercy of criminals, and deeply rooted superstitions filled the darkness with invisible enemies. Surviving the night was the main task, and dawn was perceived as a real salvation. This experience shaped people who were completely different from us. Their lives were full of fear, but at the same time taught them caution, foresight, and the ability to appreciate simple things, such as sunlight. The history of the medieval night is a reminder of how fragile our illuminated and safe world is. Suggest topics for future videos that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new explorations of the mysteries of the past.
Gather